This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Forge fans, welcome back to another episode of Forge Daily. Today is September 11th, 2023. I'm your host, Mackenzie Barwell, here to give you all things Forge FC. It was another recovery session happening here at Tim Hortons Field following a big game day on Saturday against Cavalry. So in today's episode, of course, we will go over what went down this past weekend, both with the match, but also with the Spark Summit. Then later on, we'll have a listen into the post-match press conference, just in case you were unable to reach the club level following Saturday's match. Lastly, of course, it's a Monday, so we got to check in with the league standings to address any of those relevant changes that could potentially affect Forge FC ahead of these remaining weeks of the regular season. So let's start by rewinding a bit here. As you know, Forge Cavalry 0-0 draw this weekend in a highly competitive and physical matchup, very back and forth for the entirety of the match. And being at the Spark Summit, I wasn't able to watch the game a ton live, but going back and seeing the highlights, the chances that I saw over video were almost alternating. So I think that goes to show just how close of a game it actually was. This was the first 0-0 draw between these two teams in 24 meetings. And to refresh your memory, Coach Bobby's 150th match with the club. To recap, Bobby has won 3 league titles now, reached every single CPL final, and is the only coach in the league to have qualified for the Champions League and played in the Canadian Championship final. So lots of orange beards in the crowd over the weekend, and it's safe to say they were a hit amongst 7,000 Forge fans in attendance. Coach Bobby actually commented on them in the press conference, and we'll get to that in a second. But looking at Forge FC's starting 11, Kadeem Kane would get the start, and then we would also see that attacking look with Pasillas, Campbell, and Badabanga all at the front 3. Ultimately, Forge holding Cavalry to 0 shots on target, Tristan Henry recording his league-leading 9th clean sheet of the 2023 season. Also, one other thing I really wanted to talk about, I saw him go on. 17-year-old Kayvon Tavernier would get his first professional debut with a sub into the match, approximately 10 minutes left of the game, which was awesome to see. He's been working super hard in training, so definitely well-deserved on that front. Now, let's have a listen into that post-match press conference. I thought Cavalry FC's head coach, Tommy Wheeldon Jr., had something funny to say about the history between these two teams, and then Coach Bobby shared his thoughts on those orange beards, as well as the match overall.
Yeah, we're getting bored of each other over the years now. We're getting bored of Bobby's beard and Kyle Becker. And now, listen, they're a terrific football club. They're on the chase now. We knew coming here we had to pick up some points. So if you can't beat them, just make sure they don't beat you. And I think that's what we achieved here today, kept a clean sheet. And I thought it was a very professional performance, especially after the manner in which we played last week. We've got tough road games here, so picking up as many points as you can is good.
Yeah, especially after the game. I see one to my right here. Maybe if I look a little bit further. So you're a lucky one. Now you just need to match the color. It's a game where one team needs to come in and win and another team doesn't need to, and that usually sets something up for a game. It's pretty clear. Two teams different, although we did something a little bit different today and gave up a little bit of possession. In the end, that created opportunities for us, that created good shooting situations for us, because we know a lot of times Cavalry will just hold possession behind midfield. And credit to them, because they needed to find the goal if it came, and if not, no problem. We've been in these situations before on how you manage games. I thought we could have been a little bit more aggressive in certain phases of the game. A lot of our shots have come from further distance, good finishing opportunities, but we need to get a little bit closer to goal today. To be honest, we were in those spaces a lot of the times. I think they were dropping back with 5 in the back. That usually congests things. But yeah, we just maybe weren't making the decisive runs and getting the ball in those spaces. But then again, that gave us some good shooting lanes, which traditionally we don't have in games. We look in the first half. I think there's a couple with Benny there, a couple of second opportunities right before halftime with Woobens, and the same thing in the second half. We have some excellent shots from Abu, from Bex in those areas. Yeah, it's just, if you don't score, you don't win a game, and it's as simple as that. Defensively, I thought we were good, and that's the one thing you always take because as you get closer to things, and hopefully we're doing a right job and playing in the playoffs, and we'll see where things end up in the standings. It's we know how to win games there, and I think we've given a good little defensive effort tonight, which is also important. I think it's 3 shutouts now in a row. Not a more careful approach. Most teams will come in here and expect us to dominate on the ball. Sometimes you have to do things a little bit differently as well. I think this is our 7th tie at home, so sometimes it's not something we've been used to over the years, but you have to do things a little bit differently, and there's a lot of moments on a slick pitch where we're able to turn the ball over with Cavalry overplaying in their own half, which is something they do. Maybe if we're sharper, we could pick up on that and get a goal, and then the story is a lot different. But that's not how it went. I think they told me it was my 150th game. You can expect anything and everything different each and every game. That's for sure. Especially when we get down to this stretch, we've learned to win big games, being on the ball and being assertive, being a team that sits a little bit deeper. You have to switch things. We're playing everyone 4 times, and if all is good and you're playing in the playoffs, you're going to play somebody a 5th time. So you can't just keep on doing the same thing. I think that's a little bit crazy.
And before we move on, I briefly talked about it earlier. Prior to the game, Forge FC held their 2nd annual Spark Summit, which was an absolute success. I know you all are familiar with some of our panelists. I had Patrice Whiffen on here. I talked about them as they were being released in the weeks leading up. Our moderator, Jacqueline Dory, did a phenomenal job. The conversation was just so authentic. So many questions were asked, and I know I learned a lot from Jacqueline and the rest of the panelists. I was honestly just in awe the entire time listening to these women. So I just wanted to go out of my way and say a big congratulations and thank you to Courtney and Shannon from our community engagement team, because I saw the preparation for the event and then I saw the execution, and it was just so well done in every single way. And I know that all of the girls, including myself, who want to learn more about females in the sports industry and how the successful women have gotten to where they are, just learned so much. So if you weren't able to come out this year, I highly, highly recommend, take this as your sign to come next season, because that was genuinely one of the most inspiring events that I have been to. All right, moving on before we finish up, now to the CPL standings. Forge FC hold a record of 9 wins, 6 losses, and 9 draws in the 2023 season, meaning they now currently sit 2nd with Pacific FC, a total of 36 points now. And after the tie this weekend, Cavalry won't extend their lead past the 4 points they came into the weekend with, so they've got 40. What's interesting, though, is that the 2 teams sitting at the bottom of the table, Valor and Vancouver, are coming off wins against York and Atletico. Halifax also coming off a draw. So these results kind of widen the gap between the top 3 teams and the rest of the league. The next best team in line below Forge and Pacific being Halifax with 33. So, definitely not an unsuccessful weekend for Forge FC, as Coach Bobby talked about in the press conference. Now we turn to the matchup against Valor on Sunday. So we'll get to that later this week. That is all I have for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will be back to check in tomorrow.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.